The building Dominic Reyes controlled didn't sleep. It waited. Every hallway was calibrated for quiet. Shoes were soft-soled. Voices stayed low. Even the elevators opened without a sound sharp enough to echo. People learned quickly. Noise invited attention, and attention invited consequences. Dominic had designed it that way. For 10 years, nothing had broken the pattern. Until the night his heart skipped. It happened in a private lounge above the city. Glass walls, low lights, power disguised as comfort. His men noticed first. A shift. A pause in movement that didn't belong. One of them glanced toward Dominic, confused. He was standing still. Completely still. In his hand was a crystal tumbler, untouched. On his mouth, warmth. A memory that shouldn't exist. A kiss. Brief. Unannounced. Human. Dominic hadn't reacted when it happened. Not outwardly. No order given. No threat issued. Just a sharp breath he hadn't taken in years, and a sensation in his chest that felt unfamiliar. Alive. Dangerous. Now, alone in his penthouse office, the city glowing beneath him, Dominic pressed his thumb against his lower lip like the feeling might still be there if he tried hard enough. 10 years without touch. Without impulse. Without mistake. And then there was Luna Carter. She hadn't asked permission. She hadn't lingered. She hadn't looked back. The memory replayed itself uninvited. Music low, bodies close, her eyes steady as she leaned in, not daring him, not begging. Just choosing. The kind of choice his world didn't allow. Across the city, Luna was brushing her teeth to a song playing too loud in her apartment, laughing at herself in the mirror. She replayed the moment once, then dismissed it just as easily. That man is trouble, she thought casually. Not because of the power. Because of the control. A knock sounded at her door. Measured. Expensive. Luna frowned. No one ever knocked like that. Dominic Reyes had learned how to live without edges. His days moved in clean lines, meetings that ended on time, decisions made without hesitation, loyalty measured in results. People mistook that for calm. They were wrong. Calm implied feeling. Dominic operated on something colder. Precision. Control. Distance. The city bent around him. Doors opened before he reached them. Conversations stopped when he entered a room. Men twice his size lowered their eyes without being told to. He didn't enjoy it. He didn't need to. Fear was simply another tool, like silence or money or time. 10 years earlier, something inside him had shut down. Not dramatically. Not all at once. It had gone quiet the way a room does when the power cuts, sudden at first, then accepted. Whatever had lived there before warmth, instinct, hesitation had been replaced with rules. Never touch what you can't control. Never want what can be taken from you. Never feel what can be used against you. It kept him alive. In his penthouse office, Dominic stood at the window, city lights stretched beneath him like circuitry. From up here, everything made sense. Cause and effect. Territory and consequence. He could trace the lines of his empire with his eyes and feel nothing at all. That was the problem. He pressed his palm flat against the glass. No reflection stared back at him the way it used to. No questions. No doubt. Just a man who had mastered survival so completely that nothing reached him anymore. People around him noticed. Not openly. Never directly. But his lieutenant spoke faster than necessary. His men waited for instructions that didn't come. The silence he carried had weight now. It followed him. Dominic didn't miss joy. He didn't miss love. Those were words for other people. What unsettled him was the absence of reaction. Violence didn't raise his pulse. Wealth didn't move him. Power no longer felt earned. It felt inherited by default. He had become untouchable. And untouchable meant unchanged. He turned away from the window and walked toward his desk, movements measured, exact. A file waited there, unopened. Names, numbers, obligations. He scanned it without interest, mind already elsewhere, circling something he refused to name. 10 years of nothing. No mistakes. No longing. No moments he couldn't account for. Until tonight. Dominic closed the file and sat back, jaw tightening slightly, not in anger, not in desire, but in recognition. Something had shifted. Not enough to be dangerous yet. Just enough to be noticed. And for the first time in a decade, that bothered him. Because control had always been his greatest weapon. And he had just felt it slip, by the smallest, quietest degree. Luna Carter had learned early that fear was a language people expected her to speak. She rarely did. The venue sat tucked between glass towers and old brick, a private space dressed up as exclusivity. Inside, music stayed low, conversations careful. This was the kind of room where power didn't announce itself, it waited to be noticed. Luna stepped into it without pause, jacket loose over one shoulder, eyes steady, expression unreadable. She didn't scan the room for approval. Didn't calculate exits. Didn't soften herself. That was the first thing that drew attention. Men like Dominic Reyes were used to reactions, hesitation, awe, tension disguised as politeness. Luna gave him none of it. When her gaze met his across the room, it held for a beat longer than expected. Not challenging. Not impressed. Just present. Dominic noticed the absence immediately. She moved through the crowd as if she belonged to no one in it. A drink appeared in her hand. She took a sip, then set it aside untouched. When someone leaned too close, she shifted away without apology. When another tried to impress her, she smiled once, brief and detached, then turned her attention elsewhere. She wasn't performing confidence. She simply had it. Dominic watched from where he stood, his presence already bending the room. People adjusted around him instinctively, but Luna did not. When she approached, it was without ceremony. No introduction. No deference. "You look like someone who's been standing still for too long," she said quietly, voice even, almost conversational. A few heads turned. His men stiffened. Dominic did not move. Most people waited for permission. Luna didn't. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, the calm set of her mouth. There was no tremor in her hands. No quickened breath. Just a woman choosing a moment. "Don't worry," she added lightly. "I'm not here to ask for anything." That was the second thing that unsettled him. The kiss came and went like a decision already made. No hesitation. No urgency. Just contact, brief, warm, unmistakably real. Then distance again. Luna stepped back first. She didn't search his face for reaction. Didn't wait for consequence. She simply adjusted her jacket and glanced around the room, as if the moment belonged to her alone. "Have a good night," she said, already turning away. Dominic remained where he was, the room returning to its careful hum around him. His men waited. The music resumed. The world corrected itself. Except for the space she left behind. Luna walked out into the night air, pulse steady, expression unchanged. She didn't look back. Inside, Dominic Reyes stood still, aware of one undeniable truth. For the first time in 10 years, someone had entered his world and left exactly as she came in, untouched, unafraid, and entirely her own. The kiss did not announce itself as a turning point. It didn't crash through him or steal his breath the way stories promised. It was brief, controlled, almost restrained. And yet Dominic Reyes felt it long after Luna Carter had stepped away, long after the room resumed its careful rhythm, long after his men relaxed their shoulders and returned to their watch. He stood there, glass still untouched in his hand, aware of his heartbeat in a way he hadn't been for a decade. Once, years ago, he would have dismissed it. Labeled it impulse. A mistake. Something to be corrected swiftly and quietly. But this felt different. Not dangerous in the way violence was dangerous. Not reckless. It felt present. Alive. Later, when the building emptied and the night stretched thin and quiet, Dominic returned to his penthouse alone. The city glowed beneath him, vast and obedient. From up here, he could see the lines of everything he controlled: streets, businesses, alliances, each one a reminder of how carefully he had constructed his life. It should have grounded him. Instead, his mind returned to a single moment. The exact angle of her face. The certainty with which she moved. The absence of hesitation. Luna Carter had not kissed him to provoke, to impress, or to survive. She had kissed him because she chose to. That realization tightened something in his chest. 10 years ago, after the betrayal, after the blood and the silence that followed, Dominic had made a decision. Feeling was a liability. Wanting was an invitation for loss. He had buried that part of himself so thoroughly that even memory dulled around the edges. Tonight, it stirred. He pressed his fingers briefly to his mouth, then dropped his hand as if caught in the act of something shameful. The sensation lingered anyway, refusing to be dismissed. It followed him as he removed his jacket, as he poured a drink he didn't touch, as he stood once more at the window. This was what unsettled him most, not desire, but disruption. The kiss had cracked the surface of a life built on certainty, and through that crack had slipped a question he had avoided for 10 years. What had he given up to stay in control? Across the city, Luna kicked off her boots in her apartment and laughed softly to herself, the sound unguarded. She replayed the moment once, not with longing, but with curiosity. The stillness in his eyes. The way the room seemed to pause around him. She had expected anger, maybe consequence. She hadn't expected silence. "That man," she murmured, shaking her head as she tied her hair up. "He's going to be trouble. Not because of who he was, but because of what he wasn't anymore." Back in the penthouse, Dominic Reyes made a rare admission, to no one but himself. The kiss had not weakened him. It had reminded him of something he'd forgotten how to feel. And that was far more dangerous than fear. Sleep did not come easily. Dominic lay awake in the dark, the city a muted glow beyond the glass, his thoughts circling a single point he refused to name. He had survived worse nights, bloodier ones, louder ones, but this was quieter, and the quiet pressed in. The kiss replayed itself not as sensation now, but as consequence. A small thing. A precise thing. The kind that should have been forgotten. It wasn't. By morning, his routine resumed. Briefings delivered. Decisions made. A meeting ended before it could overrun. His men read him the way they always had, measured, exact, and found nothing out of place. Dominic allowed that illusion to stand. Control was still intact. He told himself that was enough. But he noticed the pauses. He caught himself listening longer than necessary. He asked a question twice, then waved it away. In the elevator, he felt the hum of motion under his feet and registered it, the way one registers a pulse. It irritated him. Awareness was a door. Doors led to rooms he had sealed. At his desk, he opened a report and closed it again without reading. His gaze drifted to the window. He thought of Luna's eyes, not the color, but the steadiness. The way she hadn't looked at him like a force of nature or a threat. The way she hadn't waited for permission to be brave. That was the aftershock. Not desire. Not obsession. Recognition. He had been living like a fortress, proud of walls that had never been tested. And then someone had stepped inside without trying to break them. Worse, without wanting to stay. Dominic stood and paced once, then stopped himself. Movement suggested agitation. Agitation invited questions. He took a breath instead, slow and deliberate, counting the seconds the way he used to count exits. What had awakened was not a hunger. It was a memory of agency he had surrendered. Choice, uncoerced. Contact without leverage. A moment that asked nothing of him and demanded nothing in return. That kind of freedom was unfamiliar. Dangerous. He called his lieutenant and listened to the report without interruption. When it ended, Dominic said nothing for a beat longer than necessary. "Find out who was at the venue," he said at last. "Not her." "Yes, boss." Quietly. The line went dead. Dominic returned to the window. Below, the city moved, indifferent and alive. He realized then that what unsettled him most was not the kiss itself, but the way it had exposed a truth he had avoided. Numbness had never been strength. It had been a truce. And truce implied an enemy. Somewhere across the city, Luna was walking to work with her collar turned up against the wind, her thoughts already elsewhere. She did not think of him again that morning. Dominic did. He pressed his hand flat to the glass and made a decision that felt like the smallest rebellion. He would not chase the feeling. He would not bury it either. He would observe it. For now, That was control enough. Luna Carter noticed the shift before anyone spoke it out loud. It showed up in small, inconvenient ways. A doorman who suddenly knew her name. A bartender who waved off her tab without explanation. An invitation slipped under her apartment door instead of sent to her phone. Heavy paper, no signature, the time and place precise. Power announcing itself without asking. She studied the card once, then left it on the counter and went to work. Luna had spent too much of her life learning how easily attention turned into expectation. How quickly interest became ownership if you didn't interrupt it early. She had no intention of becoming a story people told about a man like Dominic Reyes. That night, she chose a different bar. Smaller. Louder. No velvet ropes, no watchful eyes pretending not to watch. She laughed with the bartender, danced to a song she loved, let herself exist without meaning anything to anyone else. When two men stepped into the room, she noticed immediately. They didn't scan the crowd like predators. They didn't posture. They simply waited, calm and still, like they expected the world to accommodate them. One of them met her gaze briefly, then looked away. That was the tell. Luna finished her drink and stood, unhurried. She walked past them toward the door. One of the men shifted, just enough to block her path. Not aggressively, not yet. "Miss Carter," he said politely. "Our employer would like a word." She looked at him, then at his partner, then past them to the open street beyond. Her pulse stayed even. "You can tell your employer," she said, voice steady, "that if he wants to speak to me, he knows where I was last time." A pause. "He prefers not to repeat himself." Luna smiled, slow and sharp. Then he should get used to disappointment. She stepped around them before they could decide what to do next and pushed the door open. Cold air hit her face, clean and honest. She welcomed it. Behind her, the men didn't follow. Across the city, Dominic Reyes stood in his office listening to the report without interruption. The words were delivered carefully, respectfully, but the message was clear. She had not been impressed. She had not been intimidated. She had walked away. When the call ended, Dominic remained where he was, eyes on the city, jaw set. There was no anger in him. No urge to correct the situation. Only a quiet, undeniable respect. Luna Carter had refused him without defiance. Without fear. Without spectacle. She had not challenged his power. She had simply declined it. And in doing so, she had proven something Dominic could not ignore. She was not something to be taken. She was something that chose. Power rarely announced itself directly. It circled first. Dominic Reyes felt it in the shift of conversations that stopped a second too late. In the invitations that arrived with unnecessary urgency. In the way his name surfaced in rooms he had not entered. The city was adjusting, recalibrating around a variable it did not understand. Luna Carter. She had become a question people whispered instead of asking. Not who she was, but why she mattered. At a private dinner overlooking the river, Dominic listened as two men debated risk like it was theory instead of instinct. They spoke about optics. About stability. About how quickly influence could become distraction if not contained. "She's visible," one of them said carefully. "Visibility invites speculation." Dominic cut his steak once, precise. "Speculation isn't a problem. Attachment is," the other replied. The table went quiet. Dominic lifted his gaze slowly. "Careful," he said. "Not a threat. A reminder." Across the city, Luna felt the pressure arrive dressed as opportunity. A gallery offering her a featured spot. A brand hinting at collaboration. An invite-only event suddenly not so exclusive anymore. Every offer came with a smile and an expectation just beneath it. She declined most of them. Not loudly. Not defiantly. She simply didn't show up. That unsettled people more than refusal. At a rooftop party she attended on a whim, Luna noticed the way attention followed her now, less curious, more measuring. A woman she didn't recognize leaned close, voice light but eyes sharp. "You're becoming quite the topic," she said. Luna sipped her drink. "That sounds exhausting." "Men like Dominic Reyes don't usually allow variables," the woman continued. Luna met her gaze, unbothered. Then maybe they shouldn't build systems that can't handle them. The smile she received was thin. From a darkened room across town, Dominic watched security footage he hadn't asked for but hadn't dismissed. Luna stood laughing at something someone said, posture relaxed, body language open. She didn't belong to the room, but she didn't shrink inside it either. "She's not changing," his lieutenant observed quietly. "The rooms are." Dominic said nothing. His hand rested flat against the desk, not tense, not relaxed. He recognized the moment for what it was. The city was deciding whether Luna Carter was a liability or a lesson. And Dominic Reyes was being tested, not by enemies, but by expectation. If he claimed her, the noise would settle. If he removed her, the system would stabilize. Those were the rules everyone understood. Dominic exhaled slowly. He closed the file without comment. "Let them watch," he said at last. "No interference. No proximity." His lieutenant hesitated. "And if someone else moves first?" Dominic's eyes lifted, calm and cold. "Then they misunderstand the situation." That night, Luna stood on her fire escape, city lights blinking like distant signals. She felt the attention now, sharper than before. Not fear, awareness. "Interesting," she murmured. Two worlds were watching each other carefully, neither willing to blink. And somewhere between them, power was learning that control did not always come from possession, but from restraint. They met again by accident. At least, that's what the city would have called it. The place was small and deliberately overlooked, a late-night cafe that stayed open past reason, lights low, music soft enough to be ignored. Dominic hadn't planned to stop there. He told himself it was convenience, nothing more. Luna hadn't planned it either. She came for the quiet, for the anonymity that had grown harder to find. They noticed each other at the same time. Luna's first instinct was not to leave. That surprised her. She stayed where she was, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug, posture easy. Dominic paused near the door, coat still on, assessing the room with a glance that catalogued exits out of habit. When his eyes returned to her, something in his stance eased, not softened, just adjusted. He didn't approach immediately. That, too, surprised them both. Eventually, he moved closer, stopping a careful distance away. Close enough to speak. Far enough to leave space untouched. "You keep choosing places that don't want to be noticed," he said quietly. Luna smiled faintly. "They let me think." A beat passed. The air between them held, charged but steady. "You didn't answer my invitation," Dominic said. "You didn't ask," she replied. "Fair." He nodded once, accepting it. No apology followed. No insistence. Just acknowledgement. That was the difference she noticed, the absence of pressure. Men like him were practiced at taking up space. Dominic wasn't trying to take any. "You could have made this easier," he said. "For both of us." Luna leaned back in her chair. Easy usually costs more in the long run. He considered that. "You're not wrong." Silence settled, not awkward, not heavy. Just present. Dominic watched her as if memorizing something he didn't intend to claim. Luna watched him with equal clarity, seeing not the power but the restraint holding it in place. "You don't want anything from me," she said at last. "Not a question." "No," Dominic answered. "I want to understand why." She studied him for a moment longer, then shook her head gently. "That's not something you take." "I know." That was the truth of it. The realization sat between them, undeniable. Whatever this was, it would only exist if neither of them tried to own it. Luna stood first, slipping on her jacket. Dominic didn't move to stop her. He didn't ask her to stay. "That matters," she said quietly, meeting his eyes. "You letting me leave?" "It's a choice," he replied. "Every time." She nodded once, satisfied. Then she walked past him, close enough that he caught the faint warmth of her presence, and kept going. Dominic remained where he was long after the door closed behind her. His pulse was steady, his control intact. But this time, it wasn't built on denial. Restraint, he realized, wasn't the absence of desire. It was the decision to honor it without possession. The question surfaced the way poison always did, quietly, politely, dressed as concern. It came up in a private room above a restaurant Dominic had owned long enough that no one remembered who sold it to him. The walls were soundproofed. The wine was expensive. The men around the table spoke carefully, as if careful speech made them less afraid. "She's becoming undefined," one of them said, swirling his glass. "Undefined elements create instability." Another nodded. "People are asking questions." Dominic listened without interruption. He already knew which question they meant. It had been moving through the city for weeks now, sharpening as it went, turning curiosity into expectation. Who does she belong to? The question had nothing to do with Luna Carter. Not really. It was about order. About reassurance. About men who felt safer when every woman in a room could be placed, claimed, or dismissed. Dominic set his glass down untouched. "She doesn't," he said. Silence followed. Not shock. Calculation. "That's not how things work," someone said gently, as if explaining gravity. Dominic's gaze lifted. Level. Dangerous in its restraint. "That's exactly how they work," he replied. "You've just grown used to pretending otherwise." Across the city, Luna felt the shift before she heard about it. A hand lingered too long on her arm at a gallery opening. A smile carried an edge it hadn't before. Someone laughed and asked, half joking, "So who's backing you these days?" She pulled her arm free without ceremony. "I back myself." The laughter that followed was uneasy. Later that night, a woman cornered her near the coat check, voice low, friendly in a way that wasn't. "You should be careful," she said. "Men like Dominic Reyes don't enjoy unanswered questions." Luna met her eyes. "Then they should ask better ones." From his office window, Dominic watched the city breathe, aware now of the real enemy taking shape. It wasn't rivals. It wasn't violence. It was the assumption baked into everything he had built, the belief that power required ownership, that order required submission. They weren't afraid of Luna because she was dangerous. They were afraid because she was unclaimed. His phone rang once. He answered without greeting. "They're pushing," his lieutenant said. "Someone wants to make a point." Dominic's jaw tightened, not in anger, but resolve. "No one touches her." A pause. "And if they don't listen?" Dominic's voice was quiet. "Certain. Then they'll learn what the line actually is." That same night, Luna stood on her fire escape, city air cool against her skin. She felt eyes on her from places she couldn't see. Not threatening. Measuring. She smiled faintly. "Figures," she murmured. Two forces were moving now. One trying to cage her. One refusing to let the cage exist. And for the first time, Dominic Reyes understood the true cost of the question they kept asking. It wasn't who she belonged to. It was whether he was willing to dismantle a world that demanded an answer. Dominic Reyes did not announce the change. He never did. Power that needed to be declared was already eroding. The shift began quietly, in rooms where decisions had always been made the same way. Invitations went unanswered. Requests were returned without comment. Long-standing expectations, ownership, alignment, obedience, were met with something new. Refusal. When his lieutenant brought him a list of concerns, Dominic skimmed it once and set it aside. "These aren't threats," he said calmly. "They're habits." "They won't like this," the man replied. Dominic met his eyes. "They don't have to." What unsettled people wasn't what Dominic did, it was what he stopped doing. He no longer corrected assumptions. He didn't reassure allies who wanted clarity about where Luna Carter fit into the hierarchy. He let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "She's not part of the equation," he told one man flatly. "Stop trying to turn her into one." The room had gone still after that. For 10 years, Dominic had ruled by anticipating outcomes, by removing variables before they mattered. Luna had taught him something he hadn't expected to learn, that control didn't have to mean containment. It could mean protection without possession, space without abandonment, choice without consequence. That night, Dominic walked the city alone. No driver, no escort, just the quiet weight of streets that knew him even when no one was watching. He passed places he owned and places he didn't, felt the pulse of a world that kept moving whether he shaped it or not. For the first time in a long while, he let himself feel that movement. Across town, Luna sat on the floor of her apartment, back against the couch, music low. She sensed the pressure easing, not gone, but altered. Less invasive. Less sharp. Like a hand withdrawing before it could close into a fist. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number. She stared at it for a moment, then answered. "You changed something," she said, not bothering with hello. "Yes," Dominic replied. "And it cost me." She smiled softly. "Good." A pause followed, not heavy, not charged. "Honest. I won't ask you to trust me," he continued. "I won't ask you for anything at all." "I know," she said. "That's why this works." Works wasn't the word Dominic would have chosen. But he understood what she meant. The balance. The line neither of them had crossed. When the call ended, Dominic stood at the window of his office, city lights scattered like possibilities instead of threats. He felt different, not weaker, not softer. Lighter. He hadn't lost control. He had redefined it. And in doing so, Dominic Reyes realized he was no longer the man who felt nothing. He was the man who chose what to feel, and what kind of world he would allow to exist around it.